This is episode number 45 of the Silver Track Extra.
Thanks for tuning in to the Silver Track Extra, your source for the best tips, tricks, and how-tos to dominate the security industry, helping you improve your business, win more contracts, and crush your competition. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silver Track Nation? My name is Johnny Page, and I'm joined here with Chris Anderson, and we're on episode number 45 and part 4 of the ultimate guide to running your security dispatch center. And today, Chris, finally, we are at how to launch your in-house call center. And I know you and I have had discussions off the podcast, and we really believe this is probably the better way to go now, especially for a company that's growing, that continues to grow. It just seems to be a better solution in terms of making sure that you have control over the full customer experience. I know you and I have spent a lot of time on really optimizing customer retention and making sure that you hold on to those contracts. Of course, the dispatch center is going to be a huge part of that. I'm really excited that you've had experience in both the in-house and the outsourced methods. So Chris, what was the difference really for you on the in-house and the outsourced, and why did you eventually settle on just keeping this in-house?
Well, if you keep it in, there's a huge advantage to it just on the sales and marketing side, to be able to go into your client and tell them that you have a 24-hour call center that relieves them with just about everything that they need to do in the leasing center or the management office. It's a huge bonus for you, but you obviously have to be able to back that up. So again, we talked about it in episode 3. You know, when I had my call center, we had the ability for residents or clients, whatever, to call us 24/7 to register their vehicle, obtain a parking permit, get a visitor pass, report a security issue. And John, we even went as far as helping them with their after-hour maintenance emergencies, including some of the communities actually taking their calls for maintenance issues. So you can imagine we were saving them a lot of time, and we had it all set up. I had bilingual dispatchers that were there on the phone to take it for some of the communities that were Hispanic and be able to take that call for fire, flood, blood, and get it to the right person. That's a huge cost for that management or that community when we were taking a part of that, and that was part of our service.
Well, and then you look at, Chris, that is what we talk about when we say really making the shift from a vendor to a partner, right? Because now you are an integral part of that property management's operation. So I think it's amazing. It's really exciting as a company starts to make this transition. It's a great service to be able to add, and it's really something that it's a milestone in the lifetime of a security company. So the fact that we're having this conversation, that you're listening to this podcast, very exciting to know that you are well on your way to launching an in-house call center. So Chris, when we get ready to start this, let's run through a little checklist of really some things to start considering that you need to get in place before you launch this call center.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first, we need to determine the size and the need of the work. And everything has gone back to this so far, Chris. We really can't do much without knowing what's the volume of phone calls coming in, what's the scope of work that needs to be completed, whether it's outsourced or in-house. And for this, we need to find out the size of the work that's needed and what type of technology tools do we need to accomplish that. Are we going to use VoIP? Do we need to set up a toll-free line? Do we have a line that the calls are already coming into? We need to do a good assessment to make sure that you have an office space and you have all the technology tools needed to really be receiving and dispatching these phone calls.
Yeah, because there's a big cost. And when I was doing this, John, we didn't have VoIP, right? We were spending huge money with telephone systems that had multiple mailboxes, answering services, being able to do the voiceover for each one of the mailboxes, right? So very complex, very expensive to get that initial cost implanted. So now with the voice over IP systems, it really gives people the opportunity to really streamline that. So it's really reduced cost.
And I don't know if our listeners have a background, VoIP is short for Voice over Internet Protocol, which is basically being able to make phone calls over the internet. So it allows you to, your only reliant on an internet connection. You don't have to have like a separate phone line set up. You can pick your phone number. There's a lot of services out there that allow you to do that. But one of the things that we talked about, Chris, was making sure that you have some sort of telecommunications plan set up that allows you to route certain phone calls. You need to have a menu, and you mentioned that this being important, although it's not we wouldn't think of it as being really ideal. It's super important in making sure that we're routing the right phone calls to the right individuals, or that we're placing proper priority on a specific phone call, right?
Right, and I'm going to go back. That's absolutely correct. And I'm going to go back just a little bit on your call center. There's two things. On the call center, get everything not only just set up, but you're going to want to try, and every day possible, you're going to try to focus on reducing the calls. Not only how to take a better call, but how can you reduce the call from coming into your office, whether it's forcing the clients now to go to the internet, to a resident portal like we talked about in episode 43, right? Making sure that, again, positive contacts, having your officers with business cards to force the people that are actually calling your call center to go online and using the tool like we have with SilverTrack, where it automatically dispatches to the handheld. That's one major. Second is your dispatchers being able to have all the scripts that they need to make that phone call quick, right? So if they pick up the line or they're picking up the line, they need to be able to send it to the right mailbox, and or making sure that you have your entry message. So when they're calling your call center, you have a opening message that puts the caller into a message and it tells them what they need to do and where they need to go. Because a lot of the times maybe they'll hang up, so you don't have to take that call. So having a nice mailbox up front to tell them where to go.
Also telling them what type of information they need to have ready, right? Like you need to have your community information. If a vehicle is parked in your parking space, we need the license plate of that vehicle, all that. Just saying, which is why you have to route, for parking issues, press 3. You need to say, you're going to have a different message for each one of those, especially when you're starting to handle a high volume of phone calls. To get the most out of every person that you have in that call center, you want to make sure you go through the necessary process through in the automated menus before they actually get to a human, because that every human, it's dollars and cents for every minute they're on the phone call. There's a reason why the big companies do that. I know it's not ideal, but you can do something relatively simple, set it up. It's still a great customer service experience for the customer because they're getting to the right person who knows how to handle their issue, and you're obviously saving time and money.
We actually did an intro commercial that talked about that. Hey, welcome to, right, Anderson Security, blah, blah, blah. But took them through. Did you know that you can go online and register your vehicle, report a security issue? So we had a professional voiceover in the very beginning of the call that guided people right to the website. So we were able to reduce a lot of calls.
That's great. Yeah, especially if they have to be on hold. You could, in the time that you're on hold, you could submit this. Obviously, that's not ideal. We want to make sure that their call gets answered. We don't want to have them on hold. But if it has to happen, great way to make sure you're still providing them a way to report that issue as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next, something that we may not consider when we think of setting this up is that you need to have a pretty comprehensive list of information ready for that person taking calls. For example, first off, we need to have customer contact info, potentially have access to a CRM if there is one, something that lets them know about the scope of service for that account, what's the service being offered, what's expected. You obviously don't want to be taking you don't want to have the person on the phone being caught off guard, like that they weren't aware that there's an officer 24/7 on that site, or they weren't aware that we were doing alarm responses at a certain location, right? It's very time sensitive when we're receiving these phone calls. You need to make sure they have the right contact information, they know what the scope of service is, and then they know who to contact when specific incidents take place.
Yeah. Well, John, if you set up your mailboxes correctly, like we talked about before, when a caller is calling you, they don't want to spend a lot of time on the phone with you, okay? And they don't want to have to repeat their name over and over again. So you got to make sure your database, and what's great about SilverTrack is we have that dispatch module to streamline that entire process. So when a caller calls in, the only thing you need to ask, because they've gone through the proper channels, right? Your voiceover, your mailbox, they're pushing one. They have a security issue. You can say, how can I help you today? My name is so-and-so, ID number, going to record the call. And they say, yes, I have a disturbance. You go, great. What community are you calling from? You got the community name up. Can I have your address? got the address, you already know who the caller is, and you can dispatch that call within seconds. When you can do things like that, you are really providing customer service.
Yeah, and it allows you to handle a higher volume of phone calls. It's just better all around. It is really cool. Just a shameless plug here for SilverTrack. The system's set up to really handle a very high volume of phone calls in a very short period of time. So if you haven't checked it out yet, we'd love to show it to you. Potentially something that can help really streamline this in-house call center for you and your operation. Well, SilverTrack Nation, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors over at Paperless Proposal. But just as a quick note, there's a lot being covered in this episode. We don't expect you to remember it all. Remember to visit the show notes section of this episode. You'll get a detailed article on everything that we cover here, but you'll also be able to download the ultimate guide to running your security dispatch center, which will have all of this information and much more. So no need to sweat. I know this is going to be a little bit longer episode than you're used to. We've got tons of information coming your way. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll jump right back into our feature conversation.
Developed for mid to large security companies, Paperless Proposal is the #1 enterprise-level cloud-based proposal creation and management solution. Use it to create, send, track, and manage highly customized proactive or RFP proposals. Differentiate your company and win more business with this powerful proposal generation software that can include office files, video, templates, pricing tools, CRM integration, and e-signature approval. Contact us for a free demo at www.paperlessproposal.com/SilverTrack.
After we're talking about making sure that they have access to all the customers' information, they understand the scope of service at each account, they understand the chain of escalation for the specific incidents, they need to have employee contacts. That includes guards, supervisors, administrators with the specific extensions of who needs to be reached and when, and there needs to be a real clear expectation of who is forwarded which phone calls. Like, so which operations manager is on call that night, who is called for maintenance issues at property Y. All that type of stuff needs to be worked out, because you could really have a time-consuming kink here if, for whatever reason, that information is missing. And most likely, if you're the owner or the operator, it's probably going to be your phone that rings when someone doesn't know what to do. So it really does serve a lot of purposes in making sure there's clear expectations of who needs to be notified when, both internally and with your customers as well.
Yeah, and one of the great part about our call center is we had those protocols set up, and we had our what we call our chain of escalation calls. Number one, who's going to take the call? Number two, we made sure that that was all set up with the client, and the client understood how that procedure went, right? So when we did have an issue, if, for an example, we called you, Johnny, you were the on-call supervisor of the night, and you didn't answer your phone, who do we call next, right? So it went down. So we had all those all completely set up to avoid those type of problems. So, and then on our own staff, if anybody did call and leave a message for one of our account managers, we had protocols set up to where that account manager was required to call in every 2 hours and check their voicemail so they could respond to that client. Because if they did not respond timely, then chances are that person's going to call our call center again trying to reach you. So you had to make sure that our own staff was following up with calls.
One strategy that we can do to make sure we are really screaming through a lot of phone calls very quickly is to not stay on the phone with a customer while we're actually entering this information into the system. Now, of course, if we're using SilverTrack, we've made it very, very quick to enter that information into sites that are already set up. However, if you don't have the sites already set up, you want to make sure you just have a quick notepad there. Chris, you mentioned that you had designed one that you didn't even have to write anything out, just simply circled, checked a lot of boxes. It kept a lot of the writing to a minimum so that you're not there, the dispatcher's not there like, hold on, you don't hear the keyboard, beating around in the background. You're taking as much information down, just real shorthand, writing out a note. Then once the call's off the phone, you've got the caller off the line, then put that information in, or put that information in what's a little bit more appropriate in terms of time, and so that we're streamlining the amount of time that we're actually staying on the phone with the caller.
Yeah, that really helped us, and kind of give the callers an example. I had the accounts listed for a number at the top of the paper, right? So I had all my accounts where they could just circle the number to what the account applied to. I had the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right, where they could circle Monday if it was called Monday. I had the clock, so they could circle the time, right, and so on. So everything was just a circle where they could take those calls real quick, including the account manager's name, and then they could put it in their box. So it saved a lot of time. So kind of maybe considered maybe old-fashioned, but I'll tell you, it was a time saver.
That's great. Now we also need to establish some job descriptions and requirements for the potential hires here. This is probably a new position for your company. You're going to have some different job requirements and some different skills that this person needs to possess. 3 of which I think are maybe a little bit different than some of the other positions internally. Number 1, we need to make sure that they have amazing customer service skills. More than maybe your officers or your supervisors, this person will have a lot of face time with your customers. Even though it's not face to face, they'll have a lot of interaction. So you need to make sure that it's someone who you want talking to your customers on a very frequent basis. We also want to make sure that they're bilingual. In most cases, it's a growing need now. Most metropolitan areas, you're going to want, it becomes almost mandatory. And really just in general, you're going to want to make sure that it's bilingual. It's also a great sales and marketing tool, a differentiator as well. And then they need to have some basic word processing skills. They need some technical skills so they can input these issues into your guard management system, and really make sure that that's not a hindrance for them, that they can be doing that at a pretty high volume.
Yeah. And we always had some performance issues. If, the person taking the most calls, when you say how they would be judged, John, we always, whoever's taking the most amount of calls, and we would do check-ins once in a while, right? Place a call ourselves and see how they responded.
Oh, that's a great quality assurance system there. Yeah, which leads us to our next item is just establish how performance will be judged. You want to make sure you have some metrics, like what are we going to define as doing a good job? How do we know when they're doing a good job? And then you need to communicate that to them. That's kind of management 101, but make sure that you're on the same page, the expectations are clearly expressed to this new hire. And then next, establish some standard operating procedures for officers in the field, because now they're not just calling the supervisor. There's a dispatch available. And Chris, this was a headache that you guys dealt specifically with, because an officer on site alone tends to want to call into dispatch a little bit more frequently than you'd like them to.
Well, they wanted to play cop, so we had radios at the same time. So we had radio communication, we had phones, right? And that's what they did. They spent a lot of times calling dispatch, asking, well, what building, what address, what unit. And again, this is part of the reason why Silvertrack came to play. It was all our problems we were having. We were finding ways to, partner with clients to streamline our own business. So when we talk about this, it really hits home, of course. So yeah, make sure that your field teams know when they can call, when they can't call dispatch, right? It's all available.
Yeah, that's great. And then last, we will probably use this as a segue into a future episode, but training your customer accounts, the customers at your accounts, so like the residents, the tenants, could be the homeowners, an HOA, the employees at a specific account, whoever has the ability to call in, give them multiple avenues to report so that you could potentially deflect these calls. The number one way being have them go online and report this issue. So making sure that you either have like quick instruction sheets or the recording when the phone call comes in, maybe a magnet that goes on the fridge, however you want to do this, make sure they have a couple of different ways to do that. And then obviously push them going online, because it really deflects that call from the call center and saves you that time of being on the phone with the customer.
Yeah, we did that was one of our requirements at the end of the call. We thanked them for calling us, and we always encouraged them to call if they had any problems in the future, but we always told them the fastest way to get to us when they could was to go online. So very important, John.
Well, guys, that wraps up part 4 of our 4-part series. And as I mentioned, we'll probably have another episode coming out very shortly on how to deflect some of those calls, some of the campaigns that we've seen be successful that really get the users to adopt the online reporting. But be sure to visit silvertracksoftware.com/45 for episode number 45 and download the ultimate guide to running your security dispatch center. Like we've said in previous episodes, this guide is packed full of really quality information on all the ins and outs of running your dispatch center. If this is something new to you, or if it's an area of your business that you're looking to improve, you're looking to streamline your costs, become more efficient, and keep more money in your pocket, definitely give that guide a download. That's at silvertracksoftware.com/45 for the show notes of this episode. And until next time, I'm Johnny Page.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you soon.
This has been another episode of the SilverTrack Extra. For more insider information, visit silvertracksoftware.com/extra. Listen on the go by subscribing in iTunes. Want to hear your questions answered on the show? Visit silvertracksoftware.com/questions to submit your requests.